Welcome. It's Wednesday, December 7th, 2011. That means it's the first Wednesday of the month. And per usual, we have James Evan Pilato joining us from MediaMonarchy.com and all the other great websites that he works with. James, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Thanks so much, man. I always look forward to it.
Can you believe that the next time we do this, next month, it's going to be 2012?
2012, the year we God knows what. I was going to say,
Yeah.
today's December 7th, so that's of course a date which will live in infamy. So we at least have to reference the anniversary of Pearl Harbor. Tomorrow is also the anniversary of the assassination of John Lennon. As long as we're hitting the historical
Well,
notes.
I'm very glad you mentioned that because that was something I was going to get to next hour. But since you mentioned it,
Oh,
I feel that we should pay attention to Pearl Harbor and the elements of false flagginess, if you will, with that event and the subsequent dropping of a nuclear weapon. We forget that we are the only ones to ever have dropped a nuclear weapon, not just on a military base in a country, but on civilians. Happened to be on the 33rd degree line of latitude there. No
and not
coincidence.
just once, but twice.
But twice, yeah, exactly right. Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And that's what false flag terrorism gets you into. It's a justification for the military industrial complex to do things like that. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And of course, John Lennon, also very important. You know, the symbolism of what he stands for. And what happens when you have a large voice, you're known by millions, and you don't want to continue to play ball. I mean, because is that not what it comes down to, James? Am
I
I
think
am I
so.
simplifying that too much?
We've-
He could reach millions. He was more powerful than Jesus or whatever they said, and he was not a fan of the military-industrial war complex, the New World Order, whatever you want to call it.
I think we maybe have discussed this in the past, but yeah, there's just the fact that musicians have such a far more greater, vast, reach and influence and effect and appearance than all your politicians put together can't come near a John Lennon or even a Bob Dylan or a Bob Marley or pick your name. And we see sometimes maybe why those guys like that do have to go away or become co-opted.
Yeah, exactly right. So I'm glad we got that out of the way, but also tonight we will cover at some point this Camp FEMA stuff, the National Quick Response Team that has been reported about today. They're getting ready for something. They're saying that we need to have all these FEMA bases fully staffed, James, and they're not saying why exactly.
Yeah, I was
but
going to
they're-
ask actually just to give me the quick rundown on that story.
Well, let me read you the preliminary articles here that I have from some of my sources. This is from End the Lie and Madison Rupert. I just got this in my mailbox before I came on. On November 16th, 2011, KBR Inc., formerly Kellogg Brown and Root, sent out a document to various entities regarding the establishment of a national quick response team for their current contracts with the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The nature of this quick response team is highly unusual, given that it is built around a 72-hour period for initial setup and 24 hours for incremental services. When we get back, we'll cover that some more and the 25 most censored topics from Project Censored. All right, James, before I get back into this story, and then we're going to get to the 25 most censored stories from Project Censored, I'm sure the lamestream media is going to censor this memo. I want to make a quick disclaimer, and I think you're going to be able to back me up on this, James. We want to deal with this with the trivium, okay? And what I mean by that, if you're a new listener, we want to not just jump in on the emotions and the fear and the hype. We want to take a look at the facts and what we know to be true. And I'm not saying that we should discount this, but at the same time, let's just be cool, calm, and collective and rational and address this with a level head. Is that fair enough, James?
Absolutely.
All right, that being said, we're all going to die and we're all going to FEMA camps, and they got concentration camps with mass graves ready for all of us.
And it's all coming down in the next
72
watch
hours.
your
The
watch.
nature of this quick response team is highly unusual, given that it is built around a 72-hour period for initial setup and 24 hours of incremental services, meaning that the contractors would have to set up equipment within 72 hours and be operational within 24 hours. Okay. The date of this call for contracts is quite noteworthy, given that it is the day after S 1867, the National Defense Authorization Act, fiscal year 2012. So basically, here's the short and skinny. A memo leaked. I believe InfoWars was the first site to receive this, which, again, we have to do a little fact checking here that I have not done on this topic. But nonetheless, they have a memo saying that they're basically fully staffing all of these FEMA camps. Okay. And now you may or may not infer that that means that there's something that's going to happen within the next 72 hours. I was talking to a friend of mine at the farmer's market today before the show, James, and he said, well, what's going to happen? I said, well, they could very well be staffing these concentration camps, FEMA camps, whatever you want to call them, and not necessarily be waiting for something to happen right then and there. Okay, because a lot of these camps and whatnot, these facilities have been staffed already for many years now with nobody in them. And in fact, that was one of the Project Censored stories at one point, many years ago now.
Discussing, the detention facilities.
The detention facilities, exactly. So I don't know if I got all the details down pat for this story. I keep an open mind and I'm interested in learning more about it, and we will cover this as things continue.
I think as we kind of briefly discussed during the break, that I think for me, as I said, when I first saw this headline, I kind of thought, oh yeah, there it is again. Yeah, the FEMA camps, they're going to get us tomorrow. And not to say that I discount this by any stretch. There are detention facilities, and they could roll them out at any moment when it was politically and socially expedient. But it seems like it's that sort of the fear-based, it's all coming down tomorrow. And I know this is, how I started, and probably a lot of folks did too, that you start to take this sort of, oh my God, it's going to go down tomorrow. And then you start to forward that stuff to your friends and send them emails or put it on their Facebook page or whatever, and all you're doing is wigging them out.
Well, it's the boy who cries wolf.
Exactly. So it reminds me of something that I did mention on my most recent podcast episode, was a report from Saoirse Fall or David Booth on whatdoesitmean.com about Obama issues kill order against Ron Paul. It's like, now, while I don't discount that possibility, it makes it sound as though, that it's going to be Obama's going to, and knock, bump him off. However, that's not to discount he could die in a plane crash. A convenient plane crash could take place. So we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater, to use an overused phrase about things like this. I think what you and I both try and do is probably at least put it on the record and say we're just mentioning this because people are talking about it, and we do at least want to get it on the record and out there and into discussion.
Absolutely. And I'm still learning, as many of our listeners are, and we're just letting you in on this learning process. In fact, I stand corrected. My producer just messaged me from the intelhub.com that it's not them staffing these places in 72 hours, but them being able to respond in 72 hours. But again, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're indeed going to be responding.
Yeah.
So,
or that 72-hour countdown has begun for some reason. Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, we'll continue to cover this. If you have any information on this story, please message me at bobtuskin.com or at theintelhub.com. We're looking to get some more details. I would imagine if they're staffing these places, there's all sorts of people working amongst these facilities, and we want to hear from you. So please do message us, and we'll continue to cover this as things break. That being said, James, it's our last Wednesday, first Wednesday of the month before 2012, and I thought it was a great idea. You messaged me before the show to do the 25 most censored stories from Project Censored. I had Abby Martin on the show the other day, a couple weeks ago. She's been working with Project Censored, and I was glad that, Project Censored's kind of a left-leaning program, if you will. But they've always been pretty good about really showing what the censored stories are, regardless of the bias and the left academia sort of vibe that they have.
And they've covered, as we just said, they've covered, detention facilities. They've covered, 9/11
Sure.
questions.
Yeah, they published Stephen E. Jones' Thermitic papers, and whether you agree with that or not, it's a big step up from the Democracy Nows and others, perhaps. But nonetheless, they continue to cover some real legitimate censored stories, and they have a pretty good list for the most part. And we'll go through this list in the next 45 minutes or so we have with James.
I was going to ask how much time do we have in this segment?
This segment, let's see. Oh, this segment's almost done with.
Okay, I was going to say maybe the thing to do would be to just go
Tease it.
do the countdown list and then kind of go through them,
All right,
piece by piece.
so just read through the countdown list right now.
I was going to say,
through 'em?
yeah, just quickly, just to give folks,
All right.
where we are. It's
You got it in front of you?
I got it right in front of me.
All
Number
right,
20,
I'll read one and you read one, okay? I'll
all right.
start off.
Number
Number
25.
one.
No, let's do the
Number
countdown.
25. Oh, okay, I see. Duh.
You gotta have a little pizzazz to it.
I'm glad I have you here, James.
God.
All right, number 25. Extension of DU to Libya.
Depleted uranium. Number 24. South Dakota takes extreme measures to be the top anti-abortion state.
And number 23, worldwide movement to ban or charge fees for plastic bags.
22. Participatory budgeting, a method to empower local citizens and communities.
21, Lyme disease, an emerging epidemic.
20. U.S. agencies trying to outlaw GMO food labeling.
And 19, we have Oxfam exposes how aid is used for political purposes.
18. Monsanto tries to benefit from Haiti's earthquake.
17, superbug bacteria spreading worldwide.
Number 16. Sweatshops in China are making your iPods while workers suffer.
At 15, big polluters freed from environmental oversight.
And number 14. Family pressure on young girls for genitalia mutilation continues in Kenya.
Jeez. 13, will a state of emergency be used to supersede our Constitution?
Number 12. The Pacific garbage dump. Did you really think your plastic was being recycled?
11, trafficking of Iraqi women rampant.
I hear the music. Should we hold off on the top 10?
The top 10, perfect timing. We couldn't have planned this better. All right, we'll give you the top 10 when we come back, and then we'll go through them all with James Evan Pilato. This is at his website, MediaMonarchy.com. Don't go anywhere.